listening to Nerdy for 30, where myself, Tim Keck, and friend, companion, fellow nerd, Kevin Bauer, talk about different nerdy topics, give our takes, try and wrap it up into 30 minutes. Sometimes we go long, sometimes we go under. Who knows? We're just having fun. This week, we're talking Godzilla vs. Kong. We both watched it. Kevin, going into this movie, who were you rooting for, Godzilla or King Kong?
Going into this movie, I'm rooting for my boy Godzilla.
What?
Were you coming into this, Kong?
Wow. I'm Team Kong all the way.
Well, this is kismet right here. Look at that. So I gotta ask, is it just because the Kong movie from 2017 is way better than any of the Godzilla movies that have come out in the past couple of years?
It's because of thumbs, my dude. Kong's the only one that even looks kind of like us. The big problem with these movies, the big problem right away is that these movies are never about the people in them. It's like Alexander Skarsgård or whatever is in this movie. He doesn't need to be in this movie. I really just want to watch Godzilla and Kong fight. Every Godzilla movie, they're like, this is a cool one. This is going to be crazy. Bryan Cranston's going to be in it. And it's like, well, is Bryan Cranston going to grow to 100 stories and fight Godzilla? No. Well, then I don't give a fuck that Bryan Cranston is in this movie. Okay.
I want to go on record right now and say that if Bryan Cranston did grow and fight Godzilla, I would be rooting for Bryan Cranston.
It would be my favorite movie of all time. I'd be climbing mountains and rooftops and just shouting to the world, everyone, please watch Godzilla vs. Bryan Cranston. It's incredible. It's just a real gritty sock. He just fights it. It's like a bar fight, but one of them's Bryan Cranston and the other one is a giant nuclear powered lizard who crawls out of the ocean to destroy Tokyo. And the only thing standing between Godzilla's way is Bryan fucking Cranston.
And he fights dirty.
Oh, he fights dirty.
When he got hit with the growth ray, he had some stuff in his pockets and he's ready to dig it out and use it.
He's wrapping metal chains around his fists and just beating
he's got
Godzilla
his keys
with them
in between his fingers.
He's
Can't
fighting.
open his house with them right now anyway. They're way too big.
I mean, he's fighting pretty much the way King Kong in this movie has to fight. So I think the odds heavily in favor of Godzilla. There's no way King Kong.
Vegas odds here.
I'm talking the Vegas odds. The spread is like, let's see, +8. it's King Kong +8 versus Godzilla. I don't know what the 8 is. There's no points. It's a big spread. We're talking football numbers. It's like plus 50 got King Kong. I don't know. You aren't able by the time the fight starts, you are not able to bet on Kong anymore. You're not able to bet. You're not able to bet on Godzilla anymore. My lack of gambling knowledge is coming through, but Godzilla, radioactive lizard, shoots a beam of nuclear power. King Kong, what? Big monkey?
Yeah.
Who cares? What does he have? How could he possibly defeat Godzilla?
Well, the answer, Tim, as we find out later in this movie, is an axe that was left for him by his ancestors in the center of our hollow earth. But there's a lot there to unpack. And I want to start off at the beginning of this movie.
I want to point out, I would love for you to do that. I just want to point out this axe made from a piece of Godzilla. So the only thing that can defeat Godzilla is Godzilla himself.
It's like if kryptonite was made of Superman.
Exactly. If Batman, in an attempt to fight Superman, pulled out Superman's pinky and just waved it around him, it'd be the same thing.
It's the perfect plan. So you mentioned that these movies never focus on the people. This movie did something really interesting, which is that it opened on Kong just kind of hanging out on what at the time we believed to be Skull Island. Even the way the shots were framed, we're aware of his scale, but he was framed to be normally sized in these shots, like the size that you would expect if it was a movie starring Jake Johnson. It's the size that you would expect Jake Johnson to be portrayed on screen. So in effect, it just made like the cliff that King Kong was laying up against look like sofa sized. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit, they're actually going to do it where they make the monsters the protagonists. And then we got the same exact dick pulling where it's like, no, the humans are the stars. We're just never going to care about them. But they're the stars. They're the stars, all right.
King Kong, although he doesn't have much of a character arc, is the protagonist of this movie. For all practice, he's the story. He's the emotion. Godzilla is an emotionless lizard. King Kong is about as human as a giant titan or the underworld or whatever can get. And I can relate the idea that this is a monster that doesn't have family and stuff, and he's all by himself, and he's scared and confused when he's brought to this new world. There's a way that this is compelling. I don't know if this movie necessarily nailed it, but I don't know. King Kong is a much more compelling character. Godzilla, it's hard to feel sympathetic for Godzilla. He's just a gigantic monster who's killed more things than King Kong could ever fight. You know, he took on Mothra. Mothra would have destroyed King Kong, you know, or King Ghidorah, or whatever it was. All these things would have destroyed Kong.
They're in completely different leagues. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I used when we saw the Snyder Cut and we watched that, there's a scene where the Flash is running away from Superman. The Flash, whose only superpower is that he's extremely fast, and Superman, whose superpowers are that he's extremely fast and everything else. Superman's trying to beat up the Flash, and I used the comparison that it would be like if I picked a fight with LeBron James. That's pretty much the same analogy here, except it's like with Godzilla v. Kong. It's like if I picked a fight with LeBron James, but LeBron James is in a tank. There's just not really much I can do in this situation.
They did make Kong bigger. They made a big show of like, he keeps growing, because he was definitely way bigger. That was one of my things going in was, how are they going to make Kong big enough to fight Godzilla? These past movies with Godzilla, I remember seeing some chart online that had all the different outlines, like a zoo book or something, you know, where they show a blue whale next to a person. It was like a person and then all the different Godzillas.
Yeah, the Godzilla zoo book.
Yeah.
I would buy the hell out of
that. And the most recent one is the biggest one they've ever done. This is the biggest Godzilla. And somehow King Kong needs to be that big. And I can't at moments it looks like they're eye to eye. But then King Kong is swinging off of skyscrapers. And how could he swing off of skyscrapers if he's taller than all of them? So the size thing does kind of change a lot. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it even matters, because the fights in this are pretty cool. I think all the times they square off and it's just Godzilla fighting King Kong, it's awesome. I love it. I'm here for it. When they start fighting Mecha Godzilla, I was like, yes, this is all I want. More of this, less of Millie Bobby Brown, more of this CGI fight fest, you know?
And unfortunately for you, we got so little giant monster fighting in a movie that was literally named after a fight between the two characters.
There was little. You thought this was so
maybe
little?
3, right? There's the we got a Godzilla attack, doesn't count. We've seen that. We get it. He's fucking Godzilla. We get the one where they're on the boats. We get the one where they're in Hong Kong. Is that it?
Yeah, but the Hong Kong one is like the last half hour of the movie, and they fight each other, and then they tag team Mechagodzilla. But you're right, there is a lot of the movie where they're not fighting. It's a 90-minute movie, and they're fighting for maybe 30 minutes of it, 40 minutes of it.
I think what I want from these movies is I want them to know what they are and be what they are less apologetically. That was my exact same note with King of the Monsters too, is that we got a couple fights. We got a lot of connective tissue with people that we just don't fucking care. If you want people to care about these movies and spend money on them, make it 90 minutes of the fight scenes. You're not doing anybody You're not doing anybody any services by acting like they're there for anything else.
I think it's just a budget thing. They don't have the budget for it. That's what people want. We talked during the Snyder Cut pod we did, where I like a Snyder Cut. I want a Snyder Cut. I should have Lord of the Rings, where they just cut out the hobbits. Because it's like, for me, the hobbits is just like, who cares about these hobbits? I just want to see Aragorn fucking shit up. They need to do like Snyder Cuts of, I guess it's the opposite of a Snyder Cut, because a Snyder Cut is adding 3 hours to something. But they need to do just a cut of all these movies where it's just the CGI fighting. How much more excited for this movie be? How much more exciting for this movie would you be if it came out and you heard it was going to be 45 minutes long? If you saw a movie, you're like, I'm going to pay $15 for a movie ticket to see a 45-minute movie called Godzilla vs. King Kong. I feel like I would be so excited if I knew. There's no fat on this thing. It is just CGI bumper to bumper.
Is that, I mean, okay, realistically, is that why these actors are in it at all? Are the actors just there so that you feel like if you're spending $15 on a ticket to this thing, you've seen a movie instead of just some grad student's like animation final project?
I think they look at the budget. They say, here's our budget. How much fight can we have in a movie for this budget? We can do 40 minutes of CGI fighting. Okay, how do we fill the rest of our time? I think that's genuinely what it is we need people to stall in between the CGI fight scenes that people like paid to see.
So here's what I'm thinking. You drop Alexander Skarsgård. You get 2 more minutes of fighting. I'll take that. I'll take that every day of the week.
I would too. What's his salary? How much? What could we get for his salary? I want to look at the budget. I gotta look up the budget stuff.
So while you're looking up the budget stuff, let me ask you this.
I just said I'm going to look up the budget stuff. I'm making no effort to look up the budget stuff.
I minimized a browser window when you said you were going to do that. Because I was like, he's got it. So I guess I'll ask a question and Google this at the same time. So my question for you is this, Tim. Did having Godzilla fight Kong, a mammal,
with a budget for $160 million
for the entire movie?
That's what it says. Approximately $160 million.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's all good. Did having Godzilla fight Kong, a giant mammal, change the nature of watching these fight scenes for you? Because for myself personally, it made them less enjoyable. When I see an animal that looks like me, that kind of looks vaguely human, getting hurt just makes me feel real bad for the animal.
I think that's why I was rooting for Kong. Is he's using an axe. He's fighting the way we would have to fight if we were 100-story Bryan Cranston trying to fight Godzilla. We would have to be using similar tactics to King Kong, utilizing tools, using our environment, the sneak attack, climbing a skyscraper, throwing something so Godzilla looks the other way, and then jumping on him like an animatronic spider in a haunted house, just like dropping from the ceiling. That's what I think that made me more invested in these fights. You know, have you ever see Pacific Rim, where they had these giant mechs and they were fighting each other? Those fight scenes were pretty cool. I mean, it's the same problem where it's like, you know, not enough fighting in any of these movies. They're selling us on fighting. There's no fighting. But it's people in these things. And when an arm gets ripped off or whatever, you're like, oh my God, this person feels pain. Like, that's kind of the hook of that. Oh my God, that mech got destroyed. A human being died. And I just don't feel the same thing for Godzilla. I think if Godzilla died, I would feel nothing. And when King Kong died, I was just like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, I felt for it a lot more. It was like a masterclass in why you don't ever want Pokemon to look too realistic, because you're watching this and this wave just kind of hit me at one point in the movie where I was like, this is dog fighting. They're huge, but I'm watching a dog fight right now.
and King Kong knows language. He knows sign language.
Oh
He's
my God.
communicating with the little girl. He's a thinking, living, feeling animal that they are pimping out to fight a gigantic lizard. It'd be like if you went to the zoo and they were like, cool, you guys are just in time for our chimpanzee to fight a crocodile. We haven't fed the crocodile in 2 months. We taped a banana to its head and we're just going to see what happens.
And before you ask, don't worry. The chimpanzee does know what's going on. And he is scared.
And before it happens, they prove that he knows sign language. Don't worry. This isn't some dumb animal. This is a thinking, feeling thing. They take a kitten away from it because he's been like mothering a kitten this whole time. And then they hand him an axe and they say, guys, sit back, enjoy the show. It's crocodile versus chimpanzee axe.
Look, if anything, he's too aware of what's happening.
He's very aware. He's very emotional. When Kong cries, I cry.
How long early in the movie, it's revealed that Kong has not actually been on Skull Island. He has been in a containment facility that the giant government organization Monarch has set up for him. Tim,
I thought that was on Skull Island. That wasn't on Skull Island?
I did too. I think maybe they trapped him on Skull Island. But either way, he's in a habitat and he's very much like in an enclosure. How long? I didn't catch an actual number in the movie. I just wanted to know how long you think Kong was in there, because the first movie took place like Vietnam War era, right?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. I don't know. Well, this is only. I know they talk about the MonsterVerse. I don't think it includes the first King Kong movie, the one where he's like in New York and climbs a skyscraper. I think it starts with Skull Island, right?
Yeah.
Is that Vietnam era?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Let's see here.
But I don't know. But we're doing a lot of good research while this podcast.
We sure are.
What
Live
year
on air.
does
We're
Kong
learning it.
Skull Island?
The story takes place in 1973.
And then Kong versus Godzilla takes place in the present day. So he is now a, what, you want to say 50-year-old gorilla?
Sure.
So this is a senior citizen that's being forced to bet. He just wants to retire in the inner world, the core, sit on his little throne, and live a peaceful life. And we keep forcing him to fight Godzilla, who is only attacking us because there's an evil company that's trying to do stuff. I don't know.
I
If Godzilla
want to point
attacks,
out. I just want to point out that saying that he's like 50 years old presumes that he was born when the first movie took place. I would venture to say he was at least 20, 30 years old in giant ape years at that point. So we're talking about a 70, 80-year-old.
we're talking this gorilla is old enough to run for president. In the 70s, in its 70s or 80s.
Oh my God.
It's it's a sad, it's the more you think about King Kong, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's kind of crazy. Okay, what about
how many of those years? How many of those years do you think Kong has been in this enclosure?
I'm going to say at least since 2000.
At least since 2000. Great. So we see the enclosure has a ton of cameras all over it. So let's just say, 21 years he's been in this enclosure with cameras on him 24/7. It's not like this is a random nature enclosure. He is the point of the enclosure. He is very much under observation. Little girl managed to teach him all of American Sign Language. Nobody noticed. That many cameras. Nobody noticed. She taught him all of sign language.
Because they have some in-depth conversations. They say enemy. Yeah. They say all this stuff. Also, if you're blowing my mind too with the age of the original movie, because I assumed the girl was like of a Skull Island tribe that somehow got attacked by Kong, but I don't understand how she's even there if they built this enclosure and if he's been in there for longer than a couple of years, then the timeline doesn't make any sense with this girl, right? with the little kid.
Right. There's no way that unless Skull Island has like magic that makes you extremely young all the time. If it's like Peter Pan's running around somewhere,
maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's just got some weird Neverland qualities that King Kong never grows old. And all those scientists, we needed something from like Skarsgård showing up and bumping into that lady who's like running the Kong exhibit and being like, oh my God, you haven't aged a day. And then it just turns out she's like a 90-year-old woman who's just been living on Skull Island studying King Kong this whole time. Is there any, because I was, for a moment I got excited about the group that was Millie Bobby Brown, Fire Fist from Deadpool 2, and then Paperboy from Atlanta.
Such a good lineup of people.
This is what I feel like that's the closest to the vibe we need in these movies, which is just throwing together three people with pretty high approval ratings from completely different worlds and just seeing what happens. They were the most interesting group. I did not care at all about what the other crew was up to. Found them very boring. But and ultimately, the Millie Bobby Brown clique wasn't very exciting either. But I feel like there's a lot of potential there. And that dude in Paperboy is just great. I feel like I walked away from this movie saying that dude's a great actor. He's doing he's doing a ton of work in this movie. He's kind of got the tone of it. He's just very invested in what's going on. I thought he was great. I loved it.
He showed up, man. Brian Tyree Henry. That dude is amazing. I love that he took this shitty movie as an opportunity to actually play a different role than he has in the past. Great, make the most of it. He's not just taking the paycheck. He's putting a little bit of something in there for him too.
Is there anything they could do in these movies to make the actors matter or interesting? Or is there any actors they could do? My pitch or my idea maybe was to just get, I don't even know who it would be. Just get like Kate McKinnon in there. Get like just the best like comedy people. Get like Zach Galifianakis. Just throw as many like comedy people in there as possible. Just be weird. Just get random, get like Ray Romano and Eminem to like somehow connect this to the funny, like to whatever, the Judd Apatow universe. You know how like they have, what is that? What's that movie? Funny Man or whatever, the Adam Sandler one for Apatow, where he's doing the stand-up thing. And there's that interaction with where Eminem just hates Ray Romano for some reason. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's the kind of humor that I want to see in these movies, where they just insert, I don't know, Chris Evans in here and just has a feud with 50 Cent just in the background of this movie.
It's insane that they're taking these movies where the parts of it that involve human actors are completely inconsequential, and they're taking no risks at all. There are no risks. They have the biggest fucking safety net in the world, and they're taking no risks with it. I'm totally with you. I think you also nailed it. I think Ray Romano is the guy. You got to get Ray Romano in here. Give me Ray Romano. Give me Kate McKinnon on like the level she was in Ghostbusters in 2015. Mm-hmm. She was like on a very fun wavelength in there. And I think the only way that it works, that you get anything out of people in these movies, is if you make them matter at all. Because at the end of the day, all of the giant monsters that were shown in this universe, they have their own personalities. They make their own decisions. So humans can try to do whatever the fuck they want. The giant monsters are just going to go about their day. So if there was maybe some way where it was like the monsters seem to have less visible personalities, and maybe there's a way that the humans that are involved are trying to kind of direct them at each other in order to accomplish something.
Yes.
Maybe that, like steering a horse by throwing apples in the direction you want it to go.
Because Godzilla really has no human connection in this movie at all.
No,
he's
nothing.
Just attacking this company, this evil company that is trying to harness Godzilla power. And for some reason, he senses that and he's just attacking it. And that's pretty much Godzilla's whole role in this movie. And then citizens who are reacting to the fact. I also think if I lived in this world and Godzilla attacked a factory that did who knows what science, I'd be kind of thinking maybe we should shut down this project. I don't know. Maybe someone should look at this thing. If Godzilla just attacked a random Amazon distribution center, I'd be like, hey, man, can we take a walk around? Can we see if there's anything here? What are you guys working on over there? Is it all like Amazon clothes, or are you building a nuclear reactor in the basement? If you are, maybe we could shut that down to stop our whole Godzilla problem. But King Kong, then they're like kind of setting him up to fight Godzilla. So they're kind of leading King Kong. But then, I don't know, Mechagodzilla shows up at the end and he just wants to destroy King Kong. I mean, what does he want to do? He's fighting King Kong and he just wants to attack Godzilla. Is that the whole point that he was made? And I don't know.
So there was like a leftover piece. I don't know if they really brought this idea home. Part of the way that they had a henchman controlling Mechagodzilla was using brain tissue and neurons from one of the skulls of King Ghidorah from Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And then if I interpreted it right, the King Ghidorah skull, there was enough of Ghidorah left over in there to like fry the human's brain and take over Mechagodzilla. So what we were really seeing was Ghidorah in a Mechagodzilla body trying to reassert its dominance over the world. But I don't know, man. I think you got to take more risks and just fucking go. You got to accept at a certain point that you're making a Godzilla movie and you got to have some fun with it. I want to ask you this about Mechagodzilla specifically. There's a giant fight scene into the movie. Mechagodzilla, obviously, I'm sure you can imagine, gets his shit rocked. They pull an arm off him. They pull his head off. So much fluid comes out of Mechagodzilla. Tim, what was that fluid? What was it? Was it oil?
Oh, that was machine fluid, Kevin. Without getting too technical, if you build a giant robot that's supposed to fight another robot, you need some sort of fluid going throughout the robot so that when an arm's ripped off, it looks like blood. But it's not blood, because if it was blood, then we'd have to make it an R. But in PG-13, you can show as much machine fluid as you want. Nobody cares. So
somebody's got to tell the people to do battle bots, because I think battle bots would be a lot more fun if there was robot blood leaking all over the arena.
I mean, yeah, they definitely could have had more robot blood.
How problematic was the embrace of pseudoscience in this movie? This movie was a celebration of crackhead conspiracy theories. They were absolutely adoring the fact that Brian Tyree Henry's character showers in bleach.
Which doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Wouldn't it
whatsoever.
hurt you? Wouldn't you? You wear goggles?
It would hurt so bad. His skin would be burnt. They are able to get Kong to his promised land by going to the center of that hollow earth that we all live on. The science behind which was, I mean, good God, even for Godzilla versus Kong, what a bullshit explanation for how it works to go inside of the earth.
Yeah, that part made no sense. That it was just if we're going with the budget excuse that there wasn't enough budget for fighting, let's cut out 10 minutes of the underground thing. Let's get rid of all that stuff. Let's get right to CGI fighting. They went into this whole underground thing. I guess what was the point of doing that? Was just to take up 30 minutes of the movie, and then they extracted a little bit of power juice from the center of the earth so that they could power Mechagodzilla, and they just needed a sample. They couldn't even they just needed a sample of the core or something like that. They couldn't.
Do you know what it actually might have been? I mean, look, you can write around any of this shit. I'm wondering if the actual reason they needed to go into the middle of the earth was because they go into the center of the earth in Antarctica, because there's only one point from which you can enter the center of the earth, which is like a big blue spirally vortex that Alexander Skarsgård's brother tried to go through once, but died specifically because he was crushed to death, which Alexander Skarsgård knows because how? So they go in there, they go through this whole massive warp tunnel thing. It's a big ordeal. It's got to be at least 60 minutes of this movie is them going down into this tunnel. It's so deep.
Which they needed King Kong to find, even though he goes in a straight line right to this thing. It
that was
doesn't
already
look that hard to find.
No. They'd already found it. Alexander Skarsgård's brother already went into it. So they go in there, manage to get to the center of the earth, go find like Kong Tower, like a palace that his, I guess, ancestors used to have. While we're in Kong Tower in the center of the earth, Godzilla in Hong Kong emerges, fires his nuclear breath straight down, manages to get all the way to the center of the earth. Shoots a shot all the way down so deep that Kong can then just climb back out. But there's no vortex or anything this time. There's no like crazy blue spiral. Nobody has to go through anything like that. Gravity's not reversed. Nobody's threatened to be crushed. Godzilla just digs deeper.
I need that on a shirt. Godzilla digs deeper. It is. Yeah, you could have just bypassed this whole Antarctica bullshit if you had fire breath that cored the earth. Here's my proposal to you. I think I'm going to fix this movie in like 2 seconds, right?
Sure.
Here's my premise. Instead of needing to get energy from the core of the earth, which is like the Godzilla thing, what if this evil company was setting up targets for Godzilla to attack with the intention of absorbing enough of his fire beam breath to be able to analyze it? So they are intentionally jeopardizing cities in the United States, setting them up for a Godzilla attack where he starts blasting them purely so they can gather enough data to replicate the energy that he generates. Because ultimately that's all they do at the end of the movie is that replicate this stuff.
That is so much better. That is immediately so much better. Call Cranston.
Then we tie Kong in because the government, for whatever reason, wants to get rid of Kong. Godzilla becomes a problem, and then they barter. Then the people who watch Kong barter on his behalf, saying, if Kong takes care of Godzilla for you, you will let him live on Australia or whatever for the rest of his life. You just say, listen, there's an island in Hawaii. Kong can have it if you take care of our Godzilla problem. So now King Kong is like a hired thug to take out this Godzilla who is unintentionally being provoked by this evil corporation, which at the very end of the movie, they get enough energy to create this mech god. I mean, it's easy to come up with some dumb excuse to skip like half the movie. They were literally just stalling in between CGI fights.
It just makes me hate it even more. Just a missed opportunity. Check out the fights on YouTube. That's all that's worth it here. I think
while it's on HBO, check it out. Just fast forward every time you see a person. Every time you see a person, hit fast forward. As soon as there's no person on screen, just soak it in. Enjoy, man. There's 30 good minutes in this movie.
I think from Godzilla in 2014 to now, we have maybe accumulated the 45 minutes of fight scenes that you want one of these movies to be. I think we've maybe gotten there.
If you just take all the fight scenes out of the Monsterverse thing and just threw them all together, that would be a whole movie unto itself. We need
Kong
that.
Was kind of good. I'll ride for Kong. Kong was kind of good. Kong Skull Island.
I have to check it out again. I remember it being the most fun, and it made sense that people were there. I don't know. Kong's a much better character than Godzilla is. Godzilla way cooler. Kong a way better character.
Definitely.
On that note, should we wrap it up, Kevin?
I think so.
This was Godzilla vs. Kong, Nerdy for 30. Check out the pod, like, rate, review, subscribe, tell people, and we'll be back sometime next week talking Falcon and Winter Soldier and maybe some other fun pod stuff along the way.
Bye.
Bye.